I thought there was a shut off time. Adam.
Well, if somebody shows up, that phone will ring. I'll keep on. Okay. Evening. Good evening. We are here for the Waco MPO public information meeting that began on August 21st, and it will continue on until September 20th. And today, this is the second of the two public meetings that we have organized. And with us here in this room, to my left is Arthur, Senior Planner with Waco MPO, Daniela, Engagement Specialist, Nora, Senior Planner, Annette, Senior Planner, and we also have Trey Yannick, Michael McDaniel from LJA Consultants, and working on SPUR 298 and the US 84 projects on which we have related amendments at the meeting today. And we also have Kyle Riley working on I-35 portion with TxDOT, which is another major amendment that we will be discussing today in this meeting. But before we begin, part of our requirement is first, let me walk you through the agenda of it. So let's go to the next slide. So we will begin with the MPO and its role, and then we'll have a review of carbon reduction program funding recommendations that Nora will walk us through, followed by review of all of our proposed plan and program amendments. Annette will walk us through for the MTP and the TIP program amendments. And then we'll discuss the opportunities for public comments and also answer questions and answers that we can respond to at the end of each of the reviews, as well as at the end of this meeting. Next slide, please. So metropolitan planning organizations across the country, and now we have just over 400 of them. We provide local input into our long-term regional transportation decisions following the 3C principle of cooperative, continuous, and comprehensive. And we consider all different modes of transportation as well as mobility spaces that are used by all different kinds of users. Part of our planning process typically involves prioritizing significantly regionally significant projects that have some realistic understanding that there would be funding available to execute them. We also did make decisions on how the transit and the federal highway funds are to be used within the region. And we help local governments as well as TxDOT in identifying what might be important for the regional priorities. Simultaneously, we keep track of what the future transportation network should look like and how will it function for all users, utilizing not only future of technology, but as well as future of land use and where the needs and the demands over the next 25 years might be. So MPOs are required for all urban areas that have 50,000 people or more. Typically, once you reach a threshold of 150,000, 200,000 in your contiguous urbanized area, the MPO is designated as transportation management area, and it has separate requirements. We are a non-TMA. We have just over 194,000 people in our urbanized area. We are governed by a 20-member policy board and a 19-member technical advisory committee. We also have 4 different work groups that we work very closely with. And these work groups do important work related to bike and pedestrian planning, connected and automated vehicle related planning, citizen participation related concerns, as well as mobility and land use. Our most important role pertains to coordinating and consensus building to plan and fund transportation projects across our planning area, which is same as McLennan County. Next slide, please. This is a graphical description of what we typically do. And as you can notice from the top, that we begin with the regional vision and goals, identify the different ways that we could implement those visions and goals, evaluate, prioritize different strategies, and that results in the development of a long-range transportation plan. And that's our MTP that typically covers an area about 25 years into the future. That results in transportation improvement program, which typically had a 4-year time horizon that we update every 2 years and also amend them as needed And finally, all of this leads to performance targets, which gives us a preview of how the system is operating, and that then goes back into the feedback to inform the regional visioning process again in every 5 years. We update our MTP every 5 years, STIP every 2 years, and the performance measures are adopted each year, and we make the necessary adjustment as we make amendments. And in today's meeting, we'll be discussing amendments to all of these 3 components of our planning process. So the first one, next slide, please, is the carbon reduction program, which was a new program that we implemented this year. And Nora is going to walk us through how we implemented and what the recommendations are.
The carbon reduction program was established by the Congressional Bipartisan Infrastructure Bill in 2021 to reduce transportation emissions. The Waco MPO plans to make $4.5 million available to local entities in the Waco planning area to implement carbon reduction strategies over a 5-year period, and they'll be awarded through a call for proposals. The Waco MPO conducted its first call for proposals this year with approximately $2.1 million worth of available funding. The policy board will consider awarding CRP funds on September 21st of this year. The carbon reduction project awards from this year's call proposals recommended funding for 8 proposals, an awarding of $1,356,000 in federal funds for 5 proposals submitted by local project sponsors, $434,785 in total local match, and $1,790,811 in total estimated costs. We'll award up to $1,058,160 in federal funds to advance sections of 3 projects from the MPO Active Transportation Plan. And there's a flexible strategy to address the $2.2 million worth of estimated available funding. The selected projects, 5 of those were from local sponsors. One was from McGregor, pedestrian activated crossing and crosswalk installation. In Waco, there was a street tree installation at Mars Drive. Also in Waco, a street tree installation on the MKT trail. In Beverly Hills, the purchase of a radar traffic trailer. And for Waco Transit, an purchase of electric vans and software for microtransit. The other 3 plans that are recommended are from the Active Transportation Plan. One in Waco is a sidewalk reconstruction on South 4th Street between Webster and Jackson Avenues, which is a downtown plan priority. Another in Waco was a sidewalk addition on Ritchie Road between Park Meadows subdivision and West Warren Street, which was endorsed by Waco Police. And the third was also in Waco, which was to add and improve sidewalks on Clay Avenue between South 3rd and South 8th Streets, which is a downtown plan priority, and also included tree installation.
So at this point, if we have any questions, comments, or ideas on any of these, we can discuss them now. And we will also have the opportunity to ask a question at the end of the presentation, as well as all the way until September 20th through our website or email. Do we have any questions? Great, thank you. So we'll move to Metropolitan Transportation Plan, and Annette can walk us through.
So as our director explained about the long range efforts that we conduct here, the Metropolitan Transportation Plan is the current one that we have right now, was adopted in 2020, and it contains a look out through 2045, and it identifies regional transportation goals and projects to be constructed or implemented by then. It includes regionally significant projects from each mode: highways, public transportation, aviation, rail, bike ped. And one thing to note is that all highway or transit projects that seek to use federal dollars must be included in the MTP. And the projects must be constrained against a realistic estimate of future revenues. And this plan is done with lots of public input. So the proposed amendment that we're going to speak to you about today is the 4th amendment to this plan adopted in 2020. And it has the purpose for it is threefold. First is to reflect a Texas Transportation Commission priority, which is the construction of the I-35 4C project in Waco. Also to reflect new funding that the region has received through carbon reduction program funding and through Federal Transit Administration's low or no emission vehicle program. And then the last need is to reflect refinements to planned projects. And these are TxDOT requested revisions that are identified during the engineering design phase of projects. And if you look to the graphic on the right, you can see down to the development of the transportation plan. We developed that in 2020, but this through the feedback loop and new funding, this is updating that plan to reflect new priorities. Next slide, please. So to give you a little more detail on I-35 construction, this is a Texas Transportation Commission priority. It was identified in their 2023 Unified Transportation Program that was adopted by the Commission on August 16th, 2023. This is based on TxDOT's Financial Management Division estimates and they expect revenue to be available to TxDOT to begin construction in 2024. TxDOT Waco hopes that that will be in the spring. So the amendment that is being proposed today contains this action, which is to reprioritize IH35 4C from a long-term priority to the highest short-term priority in the long-range plan. So that action would be to revise the short-term and long-term priorities in strategy 5 to reflect this new prioritization. And the second action would be to align the estimated project implementation costs with those identified at the 2023 UTP of TxDOT. And that would be revising the scope of work and the estimated cost. So in doing so, it would increase the project cost from 250 million to 275 million, just about. And then this adds 275 million in short-term priorities and removes 250 million in long-term priorities to the plan. So the carbon reduction program, as Nora talked about, she explained the 2023 call for proposals. So this amendment also revises the short-term priorities, but in strategy 4 to add 2.1 million of fiscal year 2024 carbon reduction funds that are allocated to the Waco MPO. And it also adds just short of 700,000 of required non-federal local match to fund the project implementation. So in short, it adds 2.8 million in short-term priorities to the plan. So one of the greenhouse gas emission reduction strategies that is a federal priority, but also a regional priority. Waco Transit had applied for a transit low or no emission grant award in 2023 earlier this year. And that program is a competitive federal program for funding the acquisition of zero and or low emission transit vehicles. And so Waco Transit received a grant to purchase 4 battery electric vehicles and chargers. So the action to the MTP is to revise the short-term priorities in strategy 6 to add 3.1 million of federal 5339C funds awarded to Waco Transit and then 546,000 of required non-federal local match for that purpose. So it adds a total of 3.7 million in short-term priorities to the plan. So another reason for the proposal in need is to align the revised scopes of work and project limits and project costs with those identified within the engineering design phase per TxDOT Waco District. So it's 2 actions: revising the short-term priorities in strategy 2, which are safety projects for the most part, and then revising short-term priorities in strategy 5, which is mobility strategy, and it affects 4 projects that we'll detail next. So US 84 project, this is largely in Woodway. It is from Farm to Market 1695, just Hewitt Drive to SPUR 298, or the split at just beyond where Franklin Avenue and Waco Drive split. And this would be, the amendment would be revising the extent, scope of work, and estimated cost. It increases the project cost from 72 million to 179 million. And it adds basically 107 million in short-term priorities to the plan. A companion project to that is a ramp project. This is a new project into the proposed for the MTP. This is from SPUR 298, that Franklin split to Lake Air Drive. And it is basically adding all the project details, including extent, scope of work, and estimated costs, which are 8 million. And so this adds 8 million in short-term priorities to the MTP. Excuse me. So another project is SPUR 298, Franklin Avenue from US 84 to State Loop 396, which is Valley Mills Drive. It's revising the extent, scope of work, and estimated cost from what is in the plan now. It's an increase in project cost from 38 million to 40 million. So it adds 2 million in short-term priorities to the plan. And then a project on State Highway 6, which is from SPUR 412 McLaughlin Road to Farm to Market 185 at what locals know as the crossroads, just beyond Lake Waco to the west. This revised the estimated cost of this project. It's a decrease in project cost from 80 million to 28 million. It removes 52 million in short-term priorities from the plan. So the total cost of the proposed amendment is 38.4 million. It increases the short-term priorities by 288.4 million, and it decreases long-term priorities in the current plan by 249 million. And the total cost of the long-range plan recommendations after this amendment is 2.23 billion, and the previous MTP cost was about 2.2 billion. So if there are any questions or comments or ideas about the proposed amendment to the MTP, please raise your hand in person or online, or to use the chat option. And is there anyone? Okay. So we will ask again at the end of the whole presentation. If you'd like to submit your comments then, go ahead. All right, and that brings us to the Transportation Improvement Program. This is the proposed amendment to the 2023 through 2026 TIP, which is a 4-year program, as the director mentioned earlier. Next slide. So what is the TIP? It programs funding for all federal highway and public transportation and pedestrian projects for the Waco region for the next 4 years. Includes the engineering, right-of-way acquisition, and construction phases of projects, and also public transportation services. In order to be included in the TIP, projects must be identified in the long-range transportation plan, MTP, that we just spoke about. Projects must be fully funded. And that means that that funding has been identified for each phase and construction. The right-of-way projects must have necessary engineering studies complete, and the construction projects must have right-of-way acquisition in progress and engineering studies complete. So the need and purpose for a proposed amendment is one, to provide consistency with the 2045 MTP. We just talked about those amendments that will be before the policy board in September for their consideration. And a lot of this is similar projects. So we're programming the funding for those identified projects. So this program is the funding identified for for federal highway, public transportation, and pedestrian projects within the Waco region. That's what the TIP in general does. For this proposal, it's the I-35 4C construction. It's the transit vehicle purchase that is made possible through the FTA 5339C grant funds that Waco Transit received. It's the it will detail the carbon reduction strategy, Appendix F revisions if you're following along. It programs those, and it also programs the design revisions to the highway projects requested by TxDOT. One last thing, there is a FAST Act requirement that as we update the TIP, that we also update performance targets that our policy board has supported or adopted and since the last amendment or the last adoption of the MTP. And those are listed in Appendix G revisions. So the proposed TIP amendment programs the construction of I-35, which we talked about, is a statewide priority allocation. It's a priority for the Texas Transportation Commission. So for this TIP, this action, this proposed would program the identified funds for I-35 4C into the 2023 through 2026 TIP as requested by the district. And the revisions are highlighted in section 1.2 of Amendment 1 and the highway financial summary. It also programs federal and state funds awarded through supplementary programs. There's two actions associated with that. That's the program to program the funds that are awarded to Waco Transit through the low or no emission program. That was a competitive grant. And those revisions are highlighted in section 1.3 in the transit project descriptions and also in the transit financial summary of Amendment 1. The second action is to program funds awarded to the local entities by the Waco MPO through the carbon reduction program. That is a formula grant. The way that we are programming those funds is that they will be, those CRP awarded projects are grouped in the TIP to provide an efficient method of programming and letting projects and to decrease the necessity for TIP step revisions. And those revisions are highlighted in section 1.4 of the amendment and also in Appendix F. And finally, this amendment will program project adjustments. These are necessitated by design and engineering process requested by TxDOT Waco District. And these are revisions to regional projects that are currently programmed for engineering, right-of-way acquisition, and or construction phases. So the revisions are highlighted in section 1.2 and in the highway financial summary of Amendment 1, and then also programs revisions to regional projects that are currently undergoing environmental assessment. Those are highlighted in Appendix D of Amendment 1. So the action, the specific action is to program adjustments to project limits, scope of work, and or project costs for the following projects. US 84, the Hewitt Drive to SPUR 298 project is already in the TIP for engineering right-of-way phases, just makes those revisions. The US 84 SPUR 298 to Lake Air Drive, it is a new project, and it will be programming the engineering phase for that project. Some revisions will be made to the SPUR 298 project that's already in the TIP for engineering and right-of-way phases, excuse me. And then some adjustments made to the State Highway 6 project that is already in the TIP for engineering. And then also revisions to the State Highway 31 overpass project at the intersection of Farm to Market 2311, which is Heritage Parkway. And that project is also included in the TIP for engineering. And then the last thing is performance targets. This is the FAST Act requirement that we spoke about. And performance targets, if you're new to this, term is that occasionally, well, always, the progress of implemented mobility strategies are measured against the performance targets to assess strengths and weaknesses of what we have implemented. And periodically, the targets may be adjusted to improve performance and expected impact of those projects, those implementation projects. So the specific action is to update Appendix G to reflect the revised performance targets that the policy board has supported or adopted over the past year and a half. And it also speaks to how new programming will assist in achieving those targets in accordance with the FAST Act requirements. And those revisions are highlighted in section 1.5 of the amendment and also in Appendix G. So again, we're asking the public for any questions they have on this tip amendment that is proposed, any comments or any ideas. So please let us know at this time. All right, we'll move on to the UPWP amendment.
So UPWP, Unified Planning Work Program, this is our work plan for the year, and we typically do them over a 2-year time frame. And we are currently operating under the fiscal year 2022-2023 UPWP, and this period ends on September 30th. This document typically identifies how in the region federal highway and transit planning funds are going to be used. Most of the UPWP funding catalogs all the PL dollars that is expended in the planning area. So we also identify each task that we intend to accomplish and the total funds for each task that we will be using. And these tasks, there are 5 of them, typically broken down into administration and management, data development, and long-range, short-range planning and spatial studies. And in this particular, for this current UPWP, we're proposing an amendment to add subtask 5.2 to carry out a study for low to zero emission propulsion study. This is largely about fleet transition plan for Waco transit system. This will add the additional cost of $86,000, of which 64 or almost 65,000 are federal funds and about $22,000 are local funds. Similar to earlier, if you have any question, you can ask them now. You can make your comments, ideas, and at the same time, we will have another opportunity at the end of the meeting. And the public comment period is going to stay open until September 20th. You're also welcome to join at the public hearing during the policy board meeting, as well as our TAC meeting on September 7th. So let's move to the next one. So as I mentioned earlier, our public comment period began on August 21. It will end on September 20th. We can accept the comment in any language. And if you would like, we especially have expertise in Spanish. The public meetings, this is the second public meeting. We conducted one earlier at 12 o'clock. And these presentations are being recorded and they're going to be posted on the MPO website from August 20th, that is today, until September 20th. Next slide. The next steps in the process, and walking back a little bit, the June 1, 2023 Technical Advisory Committee adopted all the recommendations of the carbon reduction program from the evaluation committee. And it also reviewed the anticipated plan and the amendments, and the recommendation was to seek the public input. At its next meeting on September 7th, it is going to consider all the public input that we have received till date and recommend the action to MPO Policy Board that will conduct a public hearing and make decision to adopt or revise the amendments on its meeting on September 21st, 2023. So you can send us your comments, questions, ideas. Our phone number is 254-750-5650. And our email address is mpo@wacotx.gov. You can also reach us on Facebook and LinkedIn. And as we mentioned earlier, you can send your comment in any language. And we will also have comment cards available on our website. as well as in-person meetings at the policy board meeting on September 21st. With that, do we have any question online? Any question in person? Thank you all very much. We can end the recording.